Perfect days. In a world filled with fear, scarcity, and perfectionism, perfect days are far from perfect. Welcome to the Perfect Day Podcast. I'm Koki Barini, your perfect day wealth engineer. The goal of the show is to connect and inspire those that seek true wealth by getting your perfect day house in order. The door to more perfect days in your life opens when you demystify money and learn what it looks like to grow, protect, and create true wealth in your life, one perfect day at a time. Take a perfect day walk with me as I bring you real-life successes, struggles, strategies from the extraordinary people I encounter on my own perfect day journey. Welcome to the Perfect Day Podcast. It is my delight, my delicious delight, and pleasure to bring you Katherine Frankstone of Grey Ghost Bakery right here in Charleston, South Carolina. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I loved how pre-show we were talking about evolution. Businesses and the evolution process, whether it's from the infancy of the business idea or if you go to a business that's been 20 or 30 years in the making, there's always stories of evolution. Mm-hmm. So tell us your story of evolution from the beginning.
Well, if you go way back to the beginning, I did not get the Easy Bake Oven when I was 6 years old that I wanted to have.
I read that. I had the Easy Bake.
Yeah, well, my best buddy did, and
okay.
I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And my parents were a little on the earnest side, and so
yeah.
when I expressed an interest in the Easy Bake Oven, they thought I was expressing an interest in baking, and so I needed to do it learn how to do it in the real thing.
I liked that.
So they, God forbid that, you should not capitalize on somebody's, interest at an early age. So my father pushed a chair up to the kitchen counter and taught me how to bake when I was about 6 years old. Yeah. And never got the Easy Bake Oven, but I got a lifelong passion and hobby and now business out of it. So kind of always gravitated toward cookies and always wanted to have my own business. Had always been fascinated with the specialty food business. And so when our oldest went off to college, so a long time from 6 years to
right.
then, we started looking into the specialty food industry and did some market research for about a year and a half, which entailed buying every cookie that we could find in every venue and tasting them.
What's your workout routine?
A lot better than it is now, unfortunately. But realized that we thought we had a better product than anything else in the market, and so set out to figure out how to bring a food product to market. And all of that was an evolution, because every time I thought that I had figured all those pieces of the edge pieces of the puzzle out, there was a question that I didn't think to ask that pushed that border out again,
right.
and had to answer that question before I could start filling in the meat of the puzzle. So, but took our time and knew that we wanted to build a brand. Again, didn't know what that entailed particularly, but
Are you going to tell us about the ghost piece with the brand?
I will.
Because I'm intrigued.
So anyway, long story short, ended up starting with our children's three favorite cookies, and which were chocolate espresso, molasses spice, and cinnamon pecan.
Molasses spice is my favorite.
I usually don't say which is mine because it's like choosing my favorite child. Mm-hmm. But molasses spice is my favorite one too.
Yeah, that's like being a Charlestonian. Like, what's your favorite restaurant? Yeah,
which day
favorite
of the week?
child is probably better.
Yeah,
I get that.
So we launched in 2012 and got into our first retailers in September of 2012 and continued to grow. Introduced our fourth flavor in the spring of 2014. And now we have 10 flavors. We had two
That's
additional.
An evolution.
It was an evolution.
Yeah.
We had two additional that didn't sell so well, so we retired those, and have some more ideas in the works. So it's always evolving to see what the market wants,
right.
To see what package sizes we can come up with that might fit a particular demographic or a particular need, or what combinations of cookies we can put together for gift ideas, for example.
So I want to back up a few sentences because it hit me, and I want to get maybe, I don't know if I would call it edgy, but was there an aha or like an impetus that happened? Like, what was that like push that all of a sudden you said, this is a hobby and I've loved baking, but now I'm going to do this? What happened?
So So I had actually thought about going to pastry school when I got out of college, and worked for a pastry chef for a bit. He was affiliated with a restaurant. At 22, I was a little bit too crazy to be in the restaurant business, which is as crazy now as it was then. And realized that also that I wanted to own it if I ever did get into any sort of food business. And so really that was somewhat of an evolution, because I fell back after working for the pastry chef and went to business school, and had somewhat of a general business background. Worked for a bank for a couple of years, and then ended up in the nonprofit sector and doing some development work in the nonprofit world. And then again,
that's a great foundational background.
It was a really good background
for starting a small business,
and it was very entrepreneurial. I actually co-founded Adventure Children's Museum in Columbia, so I was part of the original group that brainstormed, wouldn't it be great to have a hands-on children's museum around somebody's kitchen table? And so my role in that group was very entrepreneurial. It was figuring out what the concepts were going to be for the exhibits, what building it would go in, and how to get it funded. So,
wow.
So we basically started a business. It just happened to be a nonprofit. And so that added to sort of my background. And then
so you've always had this entrepreneurial spirit, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
maybe Dad gave you more than cooking lessons?
Maybe. Actually, my grandparents were entrepreneurs, and so that's probably where it came from.
Okay.
They, in the middle of the Depression, co-founded an insurance company on the card table in the living room. So it was kind of the same idea. So I think that's probably where it comes from. But you asked specifically about the aha moment for the cookie business. I had been thinking about it and researching and talking about starting a cookie company for a long time, and like I said, there were all these questions that I didn't even know that I needed to ask. And it felt overwhelming at times. But I had been running my mouth a lot to a lot of people. And a friend of mine in 2011 called up right before Christmas and said, so I've got this event. She was running the Red Cross in Columbia at the time, and we had discussed months before that I would donate cookies to her event. And she called up and said, okay, the event's in 2 weeks. I need X number of cookies for the event, and I want to buy 18 bags for my neighbors for Christmas. I was too stubborn to say, no, I'm about to throw in the towel, because I was too proud. And so I called the designer, because I'd already gone down the road with designing our initial labels and things, and said, how quickly can you get me labels printed, and what's the smallest quantity that would be reasonable to print? Because I really don't know that this is going anywhere, but I'm too proud and bullheaded to say I quit. So anyway, long story short, he got the labels for me in short order, and I delivered the cookies to her on December 7th, and by Christmas I had sold 300 more dozen.
Oh my gosh.
By word of mouth.
Well, and I get the date and event driven thing. I get that. It's just like, you take the breath and you go.
Yeah. So at that point I thought, all right, there really is something here. If there are that many people who want these cookies, I need to not abandon it. And so I retooled our production efforts over the next few months, and then we got into our first retailers in September 2012. So.
And you have a big announcement.
We are hoping to relocate. My biggest announcement actually is the Fresh Market.
Yes, that's what I was referring. Okay, so we have a couple announcements.
Yeah, we have a couple. But the big announcement is that we were just picked up by the Fresh Market chain nationally. And
that's awesome.
So we're in 162 stores in 22 new states. And
what's the furthest state?
From them, probably Texas, I think.
Okay.
But we are in about 40 states, so we go all the way to California.
Okay.
And
for those that are listening and have a passion like you for their product and delivering just a superior product, because I have been lucky enough to be the recipient of many Christmas presents from Grey Ghost Bakery and give them as well. But that's where it all started for me, was when someone sent me the Christmas gift of Grey Ghost, and I had a sampler. But again, molasses spice is my favorite. For the person who's saying, yeah, I have this passion, and okay, yeah, maybe I can start grassroots and launch in the way that you did and you know, print the fewest labels. How did you go from that to getting into these retailers? What did you do?
We actually walked into stores with cookies in our hands and asked to meet the manager or the buyer and
Wow.
said, we're a new company, please taste our cookies. And if we couldn't physically walk into the stores, we often sent them.
Okay.
So we would call up and find out who the key buyer was at any given location and send them a sample pack with a little bit of marketing materials and generally, and we're really fortunate this way, we've got a really good product that people like, thankfully, and once they taste them, they usually buy them. So whether that's an individual or a company. We've had very few, knock wood, people who turn us down outright. So really it was a matter of...
Is it cookie margins? Are cookie margins good?
They were razor thin.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm wondering. It's interesting. Wow. I mean, I know the cookies are good.
Yeah.
But for you just to overwhelmingly have that type of success where they just don't turn you down and they order, I'm thinking, the margins are 70%. And of course, what's the risk?
I wish. No, we primarily wholesale to other retailers, which cuts our margins significantly. So, and when we started, so think all the way back to 2012, people weren't buying everything on Amazon. And actually, for the first 2 or 3 years that we were in business, the common knowledge was that nobody was going to buy food on the internet. So I just didn't have any idea how to get online sales when we started. And so what I did kind of understand was walking into especially retailers and saying, would you carry this product? I also have a husband who works with me, and I wanted him to work with me and wanted his support. And he said he was not going to sit behind a cash register and be tied to one physical location. So that's kind of how we ended up adopting the model we did of wholesaling primarily, just because we wanted to have broader distribution than just one store.
Okay.
So while it's long been a passion or a dream of mine to have a bakery cafe, way back when I was 20 and working for the pastry chef,
your vision has changed.
The vision has changed, and we may be circling back around to that, but our initial vision for Grey Ghost Bakery was to be in wholesale distribution. So yeah, the margins are really pretty slim, and our cookies are handmade. So we have a lot of input into each one of those cookies because I'm really an overgrown home baker. I'm not an industrial baker. So what we do is what I do in my home kitchen, just in bigger bowls.
Right.
And a bigger oven. But it's still,
to say the least,
it's still
right?
labor intensive, and so our margins are pretty thin.
Wow. I love how, again, the theme of the evolution just keeps going, right? From the vision to the retooling to locations to retail, from wholesale. You do have another announcement.
Well, we're hoping
that also feels like a little bit of a vision change.
It does.
It
does. We are hoping to relocate to a new facility here in Charleston in the next few months, and that will have a street presence, which is different from what we've had to date, because in the past we've been in an industrial park where it was just completely commercial bakery. And it would have a little bit of a retail component. So probably won't be a full-service bakery cafe, but we may circle back around to that idea.
Well, I think it's a unique, maybe unique is not the word, but it's a good use of resources and dollars, right? To like expand the marketing engine, to say, okay, well, we have a location, let's get some visibility too, because your brand is there, and
and we're excited about this, and it's kind of, in some ways, feels a little bit like a backwards or reverse cycle. Excuse me. Just because most people do start with a storefront,
right?
But we do feel like now that we have an established brand, that it will be immediately recognizable and people will know.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Here's what we're gonna do. I want to go to break, and I am gonna push you on the ghost side of the branding, because I have a little link to Charleston ghosts myself.
Okay.
So we are here on Perfect Day Podcast with Katherine Frankstone of Grey Ghost Bakery. We're gonna have a few cookies and be back with you in just a minute. wants to make the next dollar and spend it in the wrong place? Nobody wants to do that. So I think that for the person who's too busy to step off the hamster wheel to really try and determine what do they even really want, or better yet, what does a perfect day even look like? Just simply having a perfect day vision is one of the deliverables. And I just have to tell you, not many people know what a perfect day looks like for them. Really cheapening what I do in a perfect day boot camp, on the smallest of the scales, is simply having a deliverable of what a perfect day looks like. Because guess what? If you know what it looks like, then you know where to put your next dollar. You know where to put your next minute of extra time. It's towards that vision. Welcome back to the Perfect Day podcast. We have Katherine Frankstone of Grey Ghost Bakery right here from Charleston, South Carolina. It's been a pleasure. So on break, we talked many things, including the branding of Grey Ghost. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the ghost aspect.
So the Grey Ghost name comes from the Gray Man story at Pawleys Island. The Gray Man is the benevolent ghost that lives at Pawleys. If you see him, he's coming to warn you that a storm's on its way. And if you see him, you're lucky, because that means your family and your house will be protected in the coming storm. So I grew up going to a family home at Pawleys, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. If I had played my cards right, I would have figured out a way to live there forever, and it just didn't work out that way. So
you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
The family house is still there.
Nice.
Shared with a bunch of relatives, and so it probably would never be my primary home, but it's still a place we go to often. And when it came time to naming our company, we wanted to name it after something that had some significance and some history, but not. Didn't want to name it the Charleston Cookie Company or the Low Country Cookie Company or what have you. So we started brainstorming and talked about how much I love Pawleys. And our original recipes were handed down in my family, much like my grandparents told us the ghost stories on the front porch of the beach house. So that's where the Grey Ghost name comes from.
Meaningful. I like it. And I was, earlier when we were talking about branding and retail, I wanted to some way ask, what makes the product different? Mm-hmm. And obviously we know how good it tastes.
A lot of it, I think, what we do in the South is tell stories. And to me, Grey Ghost Bakery has a story behind the name. It also has a story in that we're working with family recipes. Mm-hmm. And we get together over food and drink to share those stories, and so
we do that really well here
in
our region, don't we?
It's one of the things we do.
Yes.
So we just thought it made sense.
Speak to something else that I think that you do differently than other, say, food specialty retailers, which is provide meaningful jobs for women and differently abled.
Thank you. I didn't talk about this always because I was busy launching the cookie brand, but it occurred to me not long ago that one of the reasons I always wanted to have a company was to create jobs. And I wanted to create jobs for people who didn't perhaps have all of the exposure and advantages that I was able to enjoy growing up. And I also feel really strongly about employing women. So we've set out, the majority of our employees are women. The majority are minority. And we also employ some folks who are differently abled. So we work with the vocational rehab folks and the Disability Board of Charleston to find employees who can come and be trained and make a decent wage. And so we've got some employees who are on the autism spectrum, and also some hearing impaired employees right now. And we work as well with the James Island Charter High School and their special needs classes to train them in vocational training as well.
And I'm sorry, but if I'm going to sit down and eat 4 cookies like nonstop, I'd like it to do from a company that's got that sort of different value proposition.
Thank you.
So I think that's if it wasn't a part of your initial vision of the company, I do think that for entrepreneurs who, whether they're established or starting something new, that it's the competition is stiff. And whether you're in the cookie business or whether you're in financial consulting, it's like this is we are really evolving in consumerism towards sort of the cause-based and like, how are you going to leave this world a better place? So that just really struck me when I was when I read an article where I came across a really fabulous cookie story. I'd like to shift into Perfect Day.
Okay.
I know some of the our listeners really enjoy hearing about our successes, and you obviously have enjoyed that. Help us with a struggle, if you could. So, and I'd like to. I'll end up spinning it. I always do.
Yeah.
We talked on break about Adam Grant and his book Originals and how he's the nonconformist. He's sort of the eternal optimist as well, but and a big disruptor. Let's disrupt some sort of struggle that you've had within the business.
One of the things I think that drew me to having my own business is that I knew I would never be bored. One of my weaknesses, I guess, is if I've done something a time or two, I get tired and want to go do something new.
I have that disease.
So as the owner of a small business, that I don't have that problem ever. I have lots of struggles, pretty much every day, because there's always a new challenge to solve, a new problem to address. And
so is your struggle staying focused on resolving, or do you delegate those away, or?
I
drill into that a little
never
more.
thought of myself as being ADD until I owned a business, and now there's so many things pulling at me that my attention span is, I'm pinging and ponging like a
I was
pinball
just
machine.
unofficially diagnosed, and I just turned 46. But a
Really?
couple months ago, at the age of 45, was unofficially diagnosed with ADD. Yeah, and
Well-
there's no wonder why the tagline to my book talks about lifestyle deficit disorder,
Right.
which is a term I've trademarked, which is what I think entrepreneurs like you and I have, and we suffer from.
I agree.
So it's about how do we cope, and how do you keep what I call lifestyle deficit disorder, or LDD? How do you keep LDD at bay?
Well, one of the things that I have learned to do is manage and delegate better than I used to. I found,
The hardest thing
It is the
entrepreneurs
hardest
face is delegation.
but it's also hard to find the right people to delegate to. So
I bet in your industry in particular.
yeah, it's probably any industry, I would
Okay.
think.
Okay.
But it's hard to find some, when you're wearing all the hats, it's hard to figure out which hat to take off and hand off to somebody else. So, and finding the right people that you can trust to hand those hats to is a challenge. One struggle I had that I think I've just recently begun to get over is being, what are you supposed to? You're supposed to be slow to hire and quick to fire. I did that the opposite
Okay.
for a long time. I was quick to hire and make those decisions, and then very slow to transition people out, even if I knew in my heart of hearts that they weren't in the best
That's where most
place.
people sit, honestly.
And so recently, I think I've realized that living the opposite way is going to allow me to avoid that lifestyle deficit disorder a lot, because I won't worry as much about that person on the team who maybe isn't the right fit. So that helps. And I take long walks on the beach with my dog, and we try to do
Okay.
that about once or twice a week.
So that's yourself.
And
that's
that's,
your okay.
That is wonderful balance for me. So.
And that is consistently what the entrepreneur's answer to the question is, what's your struggle? It's like the work-life balance. But it sounds like you've got it pretty well in check. I want to do a little perfect day experiment. Can we do it?
Sure.
Okay, you want to play?
Certainly.
Got a few things I want to play. I want to play spin the book.
Okay.
So we're going to spin the book and see where we land.
Okay.
And then also, I've read about, and one of my favorite things that I've written about, I've read from you having written about, or spoken about rather, hats, and you just said it, but I've also written about wearing the hats. So I want to go into 411 and combating the hats, and I might want to pin you down to see what hats you're going to wear this year.
Okay.
So first, let's spin the book and see where you land.
All right. So how am I spinning the book? Just
open the book to any page you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Any page you want.
Don't make it too broad.
Don't make it too broad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't even know what this is referring to. Oh, this is referring to the commander's intent.
Okay.
So someone else spun the book recently and landed on commander's intent. The commander's intent refers to somewhat of a mission statement, but it's a commander's intent would be something that it's almost like a directive, and I could go into a longer dissertation about where did this come from. It's actually something that the United States Army started employing. This is really bizarre that this is the way that it happened, but it didn't happen until the late 1980s or 90s.
Really? Wow.
And this was a directive of the commanders would go out and they would look at the platoon leaders. For example, in World War II, when they did not have commanders in tents, right? And I don't mean commanders in tents.
Yeah.
I mean a commander's intent.
Yeah.
They would say to their troops, okay, go take the hill. Right? This is what we want. This is where we need to go. You need to go 40 clicks to the west, 20 clicks to the north, cross a bridge, take the hill. Well, the problem the United States Army came up with was, and this is the short version, is that they didn't have a commander's intent. They didn't have, go take the hill, just don't take any unarmed soldiers, women, or children. And without telling them exactly how they were going to go get there.
Right.
Okay, so it was eliminating all the directives of how to do it, but it's just giving the commander's intent, which is, we don't want to kill any unarmed soldiers, women, or children.
Right.
But we want you to take the hill.
Yeah.
Take the hill, just don't do those things. So with the page that you came to, which is don't make it too broad, is referring to, go back to a mission statement of like something that IBM would have written in 1980, right? It might be like a paragraph.
Right.
That's a very broad mission statement. So when I coach my clients into not making a commander's intent that's too broad, I say keep it super specific. Something that might resonate, let me think. Southwest Airlines, one of their commander's intent, and they didn't call it that, but their mission statement was to be the low-cost airline.
Right.
So it's one of my favorite stories about a commander's intent because one day his chief marketing officer came to him and said, oh, we're getting feedback, and our customers would really like to have a Caesar salad offered on the flight. To which the CEO looked back at her and said, what part of that fits into we're the low-cost airline? Doesn't fit. So if you create a really concise, not broad, commander's intent for the company, what that means is that your head baker, your husband, the person who takes out the mail, if they know the commander's intent, then they can make almost the same decision that you might make for your business.
Right.
So that's the page we came to. So question, do you have a commander's intent at Grey Ghost?
To make the best gourmet packaged cookies available in the market anywhere.
You passed with flying colors.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And by best, is it tasting? Is it quality? Because the quality of your ingredients is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Best tasting, I think.
Yeah.
Because everything else falls into that.
Right. Very good. So next experiment is with hats. I like to say that every perfect day involves 4 hats. I know one of the hats, it sounds like you've got pretty well done, which is the core or the personal side, because I know you're a big meditator, and I know you take long walks. So that's how you take care of self. This is a part of my 411 framework, which says you do 4 things before 11 a.m. to make it a perfect day, because you and I both know as ADDers and as business owners that our life gets away from us, right? So I say get your 4 things done before 11 a.m.
Yep.
And then it's perfect. Who cares what happens the rest of the day? So the other 4 pillars besides core would be financial.
Mm-hmm.
You also have contribution.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have experience. So how about draw out of here and see which one we land on?
Interesting. Okay.
This is part of the 411 book.
Okay. Financial.
So you chose financial.
Yep.
Okay, so if you were to put on your financial hat and only wear one financial hat, let's just say between now and the rest of the year, and you were to regard it as the single best thing that you did and focused on between now and the end of the year, what might that be?
That would be to get a comprehensive financial plan for my business and my personal life.
Wow, I just wrote myself into a job.
Yes, you did.
You know, I usually, I should take financial out of the jar because, you know, really the biggest part about Perfect Day and the spin of Perfect Day is how, for the most part, everyone's focus is financial. And so I try as the financial expert to go, yeah, the finance is important, but you got to focus on this instead. Yeah. So, that was a twist I wasn't expecting. And notwithstanding, I do feel like entrepreneurs consistently have that feeling of we've never done enough, we haven't done enough with the finance, or and it feels like this hard, unattainable horizon, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely does.
And here's what I would like to send you with, is that it's not unattainable, and it's just one of those things that you never get there. It's like time and money. It's like, oh, your solid financial plan. It's a moving target.
Yeah.
It's a moving target. But with that, I want to say thank you for playing along with Spin the Book and the 411 Grab. It has been a pleasure to have you here today.
It's been great fun.
Yeah, and I look forward to indulging in more cookies.
You will have some.
With the meaningful, with a definitely deeper, meaningful, I would call it a perfect day understanding of what really comes in behind it and who baked those cookies.
Thank you.
Katherine, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for joining us at the Perfect Day podcast. Sending you many perfect days and many more dozens of Grey Ghost cookies. Thanks. Make it a perfect day.